Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tuning Up with Iggy and Dave. And today, we'd like to preview the exciting upcoming concerts of your Hawaii Symphony Orchestra. Those will take place on March 19 and 20 at the beautiful Hawaii Theater Center. New perspectives. I hope that everyone has had a chance to catch Dave's segment with Maestro Dane Lam, a conductor who will be making his debut with us from Australia. But today I'm very excited to welcome a wonderful young guest artist, cellist Sterling Elliott to the show. How are you doing, Sterling?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Very much looking forward to welcoming you to the HSO family. And since you're very young, I know this relationship of us being with us as part of the family would last a very, very long time. Before we get to the program and your career, tell us, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Hawaii? Because just to let our viewers know, you're not in Hawaii today. You're at Juilliard School, correct?
That's correct. Yes, I'm in New York City right now. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of Hawaii is just, the beautiful, I guess, just landscape and culture, especially. It sounds like the culture, and this is just word of mouth, but it sounds like the culture in Hawaii is one of the most fascinating things to be amazed at. Besides just the amazing landscape, and like I said, and tourism and beaches and everything. But it sounds like the culture is just more of a loving environment, a more relaxed environment, one of just, I guess, perhaps more zen, which is contrasting from New York City hustle and bustle. So I'm excited to I guess be embraced by that.
Well, we hope to do a good showing for you. And as expected, usually when you perform, you may travel to places on your own just because it's close by, but Hawaii is a special place. So will you be coming on your own, or will you have others with you?
Actually, for this particular concert, my mom will be accompanying me, as well as my girlfriend. So we'll be very excited for the performances and just for Hawaii as a whole.
And we'll talk about your mother later, but of course she's been a huge part of your life and your career. This is the opportunity for us to get to know you, and I know you've done that many times, talking about your background and how you learned the cello. But please, the floor is yours, so you can introduce yourself to us. Thank you very much.
Sure, absolutely. So it all begins with mom. She is herself a violinist and violist now. She grew up playing the violin, and she always wanted to have a musical family. She wanted to pass on the gift and the love of music that she had onto her kids. And so that turned into a dream specifically of having a family string quartet. There are two older siblings that I have who both play the violin as well. And so by the time my mom was pregnant with me, I was destined to be the fourth member of that string quartet. So it was actually when my mom was pregnant with me that she went out and got the cello that would soon be in my hands as soon as I could sit down and have the attention span to hold it and play it, which was when I turned 3 years old. That's when I started playing the cello. Yes, and I started playing with my family ensemble. The Elliot Family String Quartet is what we called ourselves for about a decade or two. I joined that ensemble when I was 5 years old. We started out playing in libraries, malls, and just like local public environments, and that soon went on to concert stages in the local area, and then next thing you know, we have concerts in maybe Boston or even in San Francisco. So everything sort of escalated quite quickly, but that's how my cello journey began.
Did your mom have to do any convincing to you when she handed a cello to you as you were seeing your siblings play the violin? And did you go like, well, my siblings are playing the violin, I want to do the same thing? Or was it sort of a natural inclination to want to do something else
Oh,
from the siblings?
I absolutely wanted to do the same thing. All I saw was violin for I guess the 3 years of my life. I only saw violins with my siblings and my mom, and so why would I want to play this big old instrument that was hard to carry around at my tiny age, and etc. But my mom actually told me a white lie that really got me going at the age of 3. She told me that cellists made more money. And that shut me up until I of course grew a love for the cello by my own. I mean, being a part of this ensemble and just any ensemble after that, the cello has such a pivotal role of being the foundation in the rhythmic section, I guess, of most ensembles. And so that was really enticing to me at the time, as well as just other features about the cello, like its natural, mellow, and almost humanistic quality of sound, its massive range of notes, of pitch, leaving it to be able to do things that basically violinists can do too, as well as reaching the depths of a cello bass range. That was really just enticing to me.
Now, I'm guessing that when your siblings were young, they started to learn from your mother. Now, being a cellist yourself, did she find a good cello teacher for you? And I guess this is my question: who were your early influences, music teachers?
Yes, so my mom did, I guess, start me as a cello. She would always sit down with me whenever I would start playing cello at home, and I guess she knew the basics. But I was studying with a private teacher also when I very first started, and that teacher was Susan Hines. I studied with her. She's a member of and is a member of the Virginia Symphony. I studied with her from the age of 3 to 10, and after that, I studied with Michael Daniels, who's the principal cellist of the Virginia Symphony. So the Virginia Symphony is also where my brother, who's my oldest sibling, violinist, he also found his teachers in the Virginia Symphony. So that was a huge source of just musical knowledge, inspiration for us in Newport News, Virginia, which is where I'm from.
So you mentioned your brother, and actually, I got to meet your brother. He was part of a solo program in Hawaii a couple years ago, and he was part of a string quartet. So quite an accomplished family, which leads me to my next question: sibling rivalry. So obviously, you're playing a different instrument, but did you all have to fight for attention from your mother, or who's doing well at school in terms of music performances? Anything? Because my sister is really a professional pianist, and maybe perhaps like you, I'm the youngest in my family, and so sometimes I'm curious to get to know your opinion. But sometimes the youngest child doesn't really care about what's going on. There are no sensitivities. Just me and my siblings are older. I don't have to worry about them. I'm just doing my own thing. Share with us your perspective.
Absolutely. I'm so lucky that I got to play a different instrument from everyone else, which I think is the sole reason why there was never any competition. But I actually really got what I would say is the easy path. My brother, so to backtrack a little bit, when my mom started us as violinist and cellist, she never had envisioned for us to really do much professionally or seriously with it. It was more to grow the love of music and to have it as a skill set and as a hobby and that sort of thing. And so when we started to compete in local competitions and started to excel and see our potential with classical music, it was a surprise for us, and it was a first for us. So my brother was really a pioneer. He was really a trailblazer in terms of just doing competitions, applying for music festivals, applying for schools, making recording tapes, auditions. That was all new, so new to us, and my brother was the guinea pig, which I'm so grateful for. I mean, he did excellent, absolutely excellent. He went to 2 of the top conservatories in the country, and but it definitely wasn't easy for him to figure out, I guess, how to do that. And as a youngest sibling, as I'm sure you know, it's easy to just sort of follow that path that your sister bravely dug for us.
So let's skip a little bit ahead and get to the part where you're winning competitions, you're getting into renowned schools, and you're actually managing an early professional career, but also staying in school to further your training as an artist. So can you tell us a little bit about events in your lives that sort of kicked your career a bit?
Absolutely. Well, it actually all started, I think, the beginning of my professional career and performance opportunities all started with my winning of the Sphinx competition. And to describe a little bit about what that is, the Sphinx competition, or rather the Sphinx organization, is an organization that's their mission statement is to promote diversity in classical music, specifically in Latino and African American musicians. So they host a national competition every single year. They're now doing this for their 25th or 26th year now, and they have a junior and a senior category of that competition. So I was a first place winner, 14 years old, and I was also a first prize winner in the senior division when I was 19. But to go back to the junior division, once you win that competition, they not only award you with the prize, a cash prize, but they also cultivate your career in all kinds of ways and open the doors all around the country or even possibly the world for you in terms of performance opportunities. When I was around 14 or 15, that's when I started doing solos around the country with orchestras. I even got to play the piece that we'll be playing next week. I got to play that piece with the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra. And things just kept building and building. And once I also won the senior division when I was 19, that only propelled it even further. And so that's really been the biggest kickstart, I guess, for my career.
Great. And I want to get back to Sphinx a little later, but let's get to the repertoire that you're going to perform next week with us. Tell us about the pieces, please.
Absolutely. So the first piece we'll be playing has been one of my favorites for a good decade now. This is Popper's Hungarian Rhapsody, and for cellist, David Popper is a very huge name for us in our field. So David Popper was a famous cellist, a very accomplished cellist in his day, and he's most well known by cellists for his 40 etudes, called the 40 etudes of High School of Cello Playing. So it's really the standard, and any intermediate or advanced cellist has gone through these etudes as a means to just learn fundamentals for the instruments. So, and Popper has a number of concertos for the cello, other works. He has a number of things, but this is certainly one of his gems among with the etudes. This Hungarian Rhapsody is exactly sort of what it sounds like. It's a rhapsodic, virtuosic movement, a piece that's about 10 minutes long, and it really hits all kinds of moods and characters and colors throughout the spectrum, whether it's begins with this extremely royal and grand character, but it also goes into these really intimate and sort of heartfelt sections as well. It goes into really youthful and jubilant sections. So it really, I guess I really love how it touches every end of the spectrum in terms of the different characters of just life. And the piece after that we'll be playing will be Tchaikovsky's Andante Cantabile. So this is a really special melody. I think it's one that will be especially touching in the times that we're living in today. This piece, rather this movement, originated from Tchaikovsky's only string quartet. It's a slow movement of that string quartet. And this is a reworking of that movement for not string quartet, but cello and orchestra. It's a really heartfelt and singing melody that again I think will be especially touching to those listening to such a piece in this time.
And I noticed on your website, so you have the flashy showpiece virtuoso works like the Popper, but you also have the Tchaikovsky Andante Cantabile. I saw that you had a very beautiful version of the Franck first movement sonata, originally for violin. So when did you find in your young years that cello playing or being a musician wasn't just about playing the flashy technical showpieces, but it was also about communicating the emotions and the expression that we'll notice in the Tchaikovsky especially?
Absolutely. I think it was around when I was a young teenager that I started to, um, I guess, become self-aware of exactly what I was doing, as opposed to, just sort of playing the instrument as one a young child is maybe told to do, and maybe doing well at that. But it was around when I was a young teenager that I started to, have more significant feelings just about life, and those feelings are music is like the medium to transmit those feelings to the audience. And it also was around the time I started asking myself about what my purpose, what my goal was as an artist. What do I want to accomplish in a performance rather than just play well? And that really opens up worlds and worlds of possibilities, in terms of what you're able to do on stage. And again, what your goal is. And so, yeah, I think it was at that moment that I realized, I want to share X, Y, and Z emotion or message or, across through this music. And while virtuosic pieces can do that as well and more, I guess I have a particular, draw to these melodic slow pieces, because they can be the most intimate and the most heartfelt messages that are only sort of able to be transmitted in this form, which is music.
Another fine balance that you have to find in your training years is the expression that may or may not come naturally, but also the fundamentals, the foundations that you mentioned with all those etudes by Popper. And sometimes I wonder if you've received comments such as, "Oh, Sterling, yeah, he's a natural. Um, it comes naturally to him," which is a great compliment. But at the same time, it doesn't acknowledge the fact that you've had to put in hours and years of fundamental practice foundations for a proper technique in order to have all the tools to express your music. Did you ever find some comments that were well intended, but maybe kind of not so great?
Absolutely. Yes, in fact, that's a comment I receive frequently throughout the years. Something like you're a natural at this, or you're very gifted, you're born gifted. I think particularly the final one, "you were born gifted," is something that my mom, when we were performing in our string quartet, always sort of, felt particular about. So she would always say, "No, no, no, you don't understand what these kids go through on a daily basis." In terms of the work that she puts in, helping us, and the work that we put in, the hours that we sacrifice day in and day out. Coming straight home from school and practicing for hours, and potentially sacrificing, being able to play sports, and particularly, some other activities as well. So, just, I guess, recognizing that this is a well-trained and well-worked, skill. And while there is talent and a giftedness that particularly might come with it, I guess, my mom was always keen on making sure that people recognize the work that went into this.
Your mom, very important. Sphinx organization, very important. Um, I'm going to ask you a very simple question, but the answer is probably complicated. Sphinx works towards promoting and ensuring diversity in culture and the arts. So I'm looking from outside, and so diversity is a very trendy word these days, and a trendy but dangerous because it could be a fad. And myself, I could look at the mirror in the morning and say, okay, what am I doing to promote diversity? And then maybe I do something, and then at the end of the day, I just feel good and I'm going to bed with a peace of mind. But I think it's a lot more demanding than that. It takes a whole vocation to ensure this legacy of diversity. So at the professional level, there are efforts, but we can all agree that it starts at the grassroots level. Diversity.
Absolutely.
So, from your perspective, with your mother, I guess was helpful because she's in the middle of it all. But what would you tell someone like me to improve diversity, not just at the professional levels, but from the grassroots? I know it's a very easy question for me. I feel good asking this question and I couldn't go wash my hands, but it's a complicated answer. Sorry.
No, absolutely. I mean, you've already touched on the biggest thing is that it starts in the grassroots, which is with kids, which is in the education system. My mom was already, so I guess to start at the very beginning of this legacy in the Elliott family. To start with my mom, the only reason why she was able to play in her impoverished community was due to one particular teacher who came to her schools and introduced them to music. And if that one particular teacher hadn't offered to teach my mom for free for a number of years, who knows where I would have been down the road now. And I think going further into that, I mean, my mom had to do particular forgery on school forms when we were born, me and my siblings, just to get us in school districts with music, because there were so many, I guess, cuts in music education, especially in the classical music field. There are many times when I go out to do performances such as these, and I like to go to local schools. One of my favorite activities that COVID has taken from us, but I'm so excited to be doing that again. There's so many really meaningful experiences that I've had, such as going to particularly more impoverished communities where they don't have, again, any musical education. And that really just means that these kids don't get to see what we do or what is able to be, or just they have absolutely no clue about this entire world. And there's so many minorities, especially in these communities, in these schools. There's one time when I went to a particularly all African American school, elementary school, and I did a little concert and played for them and just told them this is what this is and everything. And I just remember so clearly there was a kid who came up to me, who had been, he was one of the few kids actually in the audience who was sitting so quietly and interested the entire time. I mean, everyone else was enjoying it, but a little bit more rambunctious. And this one quiet kid came up to me afterwards and said, "I want to be just like you one day." And it's just things like that that I think would just never be possible. The seed will never be planted if we don't, seize the opportunity to enrich these education systems that just don't have the arts, I guess, at all. So I think that's, as you're right, like you said, the grassroots. I think that's really where it comes in.
It's wonderful to have people like yourself and your family to educate us and enlightening us. You're a performer, but there's also a social consciousness because of your position as a role model. Do you feel like sometimes, like you said, it's a wonderful example that you give to others, but do you also feel sometimes that you wish you could just play a piece for its beauty and not have people not carry this sort of social consciousness weight? It's not a weight, don't get me wrong, but I think people kind of see you from different lenses.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and there are times, I guess, when I do just think about just playing. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to sort of set aside the social aspects of performing and being an artist and just purely think of music. But I do think that there is always more, I guess music is always more than just music. It always has an impact of some kind. So yes, music is always beautiful and it carries across these messages, but those messages impact people in certain ways. So I guess I mean that to say that our impact will always be more than we intended. So yes, I think it is perfectly acceptable and nice to just be thinking of music, but it is also sometimes almost a little overwhelming to realize just how much impact even us simply thinking of just music has on other people, if that makes sense.
I think you said it best. I mean, you just let music speak for itself. So you're very young, but you've made some time next week in Hawaii to give a master class and hear our talented young players. I'm assuming you haven't done too much teaching just because you're so young and you have a career and you're in school, but eventually you will be teaching more. What sort of teaching legacy from your own role models do you hope to carry on to the young students you'll be hearing?
In terms of, I guess, the particular sort of legacy, I'm not exactly sure, but I guess I can comment about something that has already been in the works. My mom, I guess I have to give most of the credit to her. We've started this family workshop in Newport News, Virginia, where we're from. Actually, we've been running it for about 5 or 6 years now, where we teach kids in our local community. We give them like basically a summer festival environment for 5 days, an intensive 5 days. And I guess the goal of that is to take what me and my siblings have learned when we get to go travel to these amazing summer festivals around the country and bring that back home to our local town, so that those kids can also experience that same sort of thing. So I guess maybe a legacy that I'd like to have is just to be able to do that, to be able to take in the amazing knowledge that I've been lucky to gain from masters, whether they're at Juilliard or musicians who I've met along my career path. And I guess I want to just pass on that knowledge to those who just, I guess, are maybe unable to hear that due to distance or inaccessibility, or they're just young and haven't gotten to that stage yet. And I guess that's what any teacher would want, is just to continue passing on what was passed on to them.
Absolutely. One word about the tool that you're using, a tool, quote unquote. Tell us about the cello that you're performing on.
Absolutely. It's a cello that I recently acquired after a pretty long search for an instrument that I guess I could call mine. For the past 4 years, while I've been studying at Juilliard, I've been using some of their cellos on loan from the instrument collection that they have here, which is absolutely amazing. But I've always had this looming deadline in my head, because I know that when I graduate or when I leave the school, it doesn't matter how attached I've come to what is really my partner in this whole thing that I do with performing. Doesn't matter how long or how close I become with the instrument, I'll have to give it up when I graduate, which is a really sad thought to have, but completely understandable. And so I was searching for a cello to accompany me after school, of course. So this is a cello I finally found at the shop Taricio in New York City. A beautiful 18th century Galliano cello. So it's an Italian cello made in Naples. And I was very fortunate to find a sponsor. Actually, Taricio had found me a sponsor, and that sponsor ended up being someone who I'd known for years through the Sphinx organization, Mr. Robert F. Smith. He's an amazing patron of the arts, someone who's on the board of Carnegie Hall. He's a huge patron of Sphinx organization. And so he really helped me out with acquiring this cello, which has been so amazing. I've had it for approximately 7 months now, and it's just been such a joy.
Well, very much looking forward to hearing you play on that cello, Gennaro Galliano. I actually used to have a Gennaro Galliano violin, but I don't have it anymore. And you mentioned Taricio, the violin shop in New York, and they've actually been very helpful to me in finding ways to deal with my violin. So Sterling, very excited to welcome you to Hawaii next week. Again, everyone, the concerts, New Perspectives, are March 19 and 20 at the Hawaii Theater. For more tickets or information, please visit myhso.org. The concert will feature our wonderful guest artist Sterling Elliott with Maestro Dane Lam. Sterling, thank you so much for your time, and I may not be at the airport waiting for you, but I'll definitely be on stage waiting for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for having me.